Here's a French sentence at beginner's level. Can you understand it? In today's video, we will take a sentence apart so that you're able to make your own with confidence. This series is all about understanding structure in a French sentence and identifying the role of each word. So keep looking at this sentence. J'ai une grande sœur qui s'appelle Sophie. Sophie a une chienne noire et blanche. Elle adore sa chienne. As you know, sentences are constructed with verbs, articles, pronouns, adverbs, conjunction, etc. So in this sentence, can you spot how many verbs there are? Can you spot how many nouns there are? Can you spot how many adjectives there are? Can you spot how many articles there are? And can you even spot how many pronouns there are? Okay, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take the beginning of that sentence. Can you see the very beginning? J'ai une grande sœur. Can you identify the verb here? Well, it's a simple sentence. There is a subject, okay? There is a noun, and there is a verb somewhere. Can you see it? It's est, ai. J'ai means I have. It comes from to have, avoir. Here, it's conjugated in the present tense. So, j'ai, I have, une grande sœur. Now, if we identify une and then grande and sœur, can you name those grammatical terms? Une is an indefinite article. It's a. Grande here is an adjective, okay? And sœur is a noun, okay? It's a common noun. So, I have a big sister. And what you need to understand about this beginning of the sentence here is that une is feminine, okay? We have two gender, feminine and masculine in French, which you need to adhere with, always. By doing that, all the adjectives are going to agree with the noun that we are using. Sœur is feminine, it's une and not un. And therefore, grand is going to be feminine too. Grande. I have a big sister, as in a older sister. It does mean tall as well, by the way. In this context, it means a big sister, an older sister. J'ai une grande sœur. Can you see that? I have a big sister. So this very simple sentence has 1, 2, 3, 4 things going on here. Je is known as a subject pronoun, okay? We've got the subject pronoun, and est is the verb from avoir. Then you've got the article, une, and then the adjective, grande, and sœur, the noun. Sometimes the adjective will be positioned after the noun, but that is another lesson completely. Right, let's have a look at the next part of the sentence. Qui s'appelle Sophie? Now, qui s'appelle Sophie here means who is called Sophie. Of course, s'appeler here is what we know it as a reflexive verb. So technically, it should be who calls herself Sophie. Qui, which is known as a relative pronoun, is going to replace something. Here, it replaces une grande sœur, which is going to be the subject for the verb that follows, s'appelle. Okay, so j'ai une grande sœur qui s'appelle Sophie. We are talking about ma grande sœur. Elle s'appelle. She is called. Now, s'appelle here is in the present tense and is conjugated with the third singular subject pronoun in mind, elle. And that's why we're saying s'appelle and not m'appelle or nous nous appelons. Can you see that? Let's have a look at the next sentence. Here it is. Sophie a une chienne noire et blanche. Can you spot the verb here? Can you spot the article? Can you spot the adjective? And the noun as well. Adjectives even, there too. Noire, blanche. Can you see that? So, Sophie is the noun. It's actually known as the proper noun, a nom propre, which is a name of somebody, like Paul or Thomas or Liam or Alexa. Sophie. Sophie has, and that's where the verb is, a, and it comes from avoir. Now we know that it is the present tense of avoir, and that we are using a because if we replace Sophie with the subject pronoun, it will be elle. Elle a. You see? Such as for je, you would say est, j'ai. Il, elle a. On a. And for nous, you would say avons, etc. And this is what I mean by conjugation of tenses in my other videos. Here, we're using avoir. We have conjugated it in the present tense with Sophie as the subject. Now, Sophie has une chienne. Again, that's an article. It's an indefinite article. And I know a lot about this article. I know that it's feminine. It's a feminine article. It's either un or une. In this case, we're using the feminine because chienne. Chienne is a noun which is feminine. So we have to agree the two together. You couldn't say un chien. Doesn't work. So with that, we say une chienne. She has a dog, a female dog. And the colors of this dog are noir et blanche. So noir is black and blanche is white. And we've added a conjonction here, a connective et with that, and. So we have in this sentence a proper noun, a verb, indefinite article, a noun or common noun, an adjective, a conjonction, okay, and another adjective. Noir as an E. Blanche is the feminine of blanc. Why do we use noir and blanche in the feminine? Very good. Because chienne is a feminine noun and une is a feminine indefinite article. So, Sophie a une chienne noire et blanche. What I'm trying to prove here, what I'm trying to get at, is that once you have an article and the gender of this article and the gender of this noun, everything must click in together. This is the trickiest part, I think, in French to understand. Before we read the full sentence, okay, together, let's have a look at the last one now. Elle adore sa chienne. Okay, what do we have? We've got 4 words here. Can you identify those 4 words? Well, elle is known as a subject pronoun. Okay, it's she. Okay, adore is the verb. It's the verb of adorer, which is the infinitive, okay, to adore. Here, it has been conjugated into the present tense. We know that because of the ending of that verb, adore, with an E. And because we're using elle. If it had been tu adore, we would have had an S at the end. But again, that's another lesson. It's a conjugating lesson. Here, elle adore. Subject pronoun, adore, present tense of adorer, verb. We're using ça and not son for a reason here. Ça is used because chienne is a feminine noun, not because it belongs to a girl. If it had belonged to a boy, if we had said il adore, we would not have said son chienne. In French, the possessive agrees with the noun it's referring to, not who it belongs to. Very important. So, elle adore sa chienne, okay, makes sense. Again, it's all clicking in together. So, ça and son can both mean her and his. Let me ask you again, can you spot how many verbs there are in this sentence? You've got the sentence here. So, there are 4 verbs. Each of these verbs serve a purpose and are, in this case, conjugated all in the present tense. Est, appelle, a, adore. Now, can you spot how many nouns there are in this sentence? Sophie, I said, is a proper noun, and chienne is a common noun. So here we've got 2 different nouns. Can you spot how many adjectives there are? Now have a look at the sentence. Grande, blanche, noire. But can you see the 4th adjective? Yes, it is ça. Though ça is not an adjective like grande and blanche, it's known as a possessive adjective. Ça. Can you spot how many articles there are in this sentence? Well, there is one indefinite article, and twice. We see it twice. Une sœur, une chienne. And of course, this indefinite article comes in a masculine form as well, which is un. And of course, we have a definite article, the, which is le, la, or les. But that's not in the sentence. Can you spot how many pronouns there are? There is je, which we see as J apostrophe, elle, which is the subject pronoun, just like je, and there is qui, which is a relative pronoun, which is who, or that, or which. Okay, let's read the sentence together now. J'ai une grande sœur qui s'appelle Sophie. Sophie a une chienne noire et blanche. Elle adore sa chienne. Okay, why don't you have a go now, making your own sentence using all the parts of the sentence that we've just looked at. Use a verb and use an article or use a pronoun. And why don't you try to use an adjective within that as well? Now remember, if you're using a feminine noun, then you need to agree this adjective with the gender of that word you're using. Why don't you post your sentence in the comments below? Here are some very helpful videos that are going to help you build more complex sentences. Have a look at them. That's it for me. Au revoir, à bientôt, bisous bisous. Here is a short French text at A2 level. Can you understand it? In today's video, we will take each sentence apart so that you are able to make your own with confidence. This series is all about understanding structure in a French sentence and identifying the role of each word. So, let's look at this text. Hier, j'ai fait de la natation et j'ai adoré. Ensuite, je suis allée à la boulangerie. Je ne me suis pas ennuyée. Sentences are constructed with nouns, verbs, articles, pronouns, adverbs, conjunctions, etc. So, let's take this sentence apart. Can you define each word grammatically? Let's have a look at this one first. Hier, j'ai fait de la natation et j'ai adoré. Hier is an adverb of time. It means yesterday. So, any verbs within that sentence will be in the past. Can you spot the verbs and tell me their tenses? J'ai fait and j'ai adoré, well done, are both in the passé composé. The passé composé indicates that an action took place in the past and is done over with. Passé composé means it's composed of two elements, an auxiliary, either avoir, to have, or être, to be, depending on the verb we are using, and the past participle of that verb. Learn how to conjugate auxiliaries in the present tense if you want to use this particular past tense, le passé composé. Je, here, is the subject pronoun. Because the auxiliary, est, starts with a vowel, je becomes je with an apostrophe. J'ai, I have. And fait is the past participle of faire, to do or to make. It's a third group verb conjugated with avoir in the passé composé. So when the verb faire, to do or to make, is used to refer to an activity, it is followed by de. Je fais de something, la musique, for example. La is known as a feminine definite article, the. And la is used here because natation, the noun, swimming, is a feminine noun. Had we used football, for example, then we would say faire du football. We can't say de le. We need to contract the tu to become du, because football is masculine. Now let's have a look at j'ai adoré. Again, passé composé used with avoir. So adorer is the past participle of adorer, the infinitive verb. It's a first group verb conjugated with avoir in the passé composé. So we've got two passés composés. J'ai fait, I've done. Et j'ai adoré, I've adored. Or I've loved, if you wish. Now let's not forget et, the coordinating conjunction, which links the two parts of the sentence together. So, yesterday, hier, I did some swimming, j'ai fait de la natation. Et j'ai adoré, and I loved it. But we are not saying it in this sentence. J'ai adoré, I loved. But it implies I loved it. Now, let's look at the second sentence. Ensuite, je suis allé à la boulangerie. Can you spot the verb and its tense? Can you spot the adverb? Can you spot the noun? What I'd like you to do is whenever you look at a French sentence, try to identify those words, the tense or the verb, the adverb and the noun, because it will all make sense in the end. Now let's start with ensuite. Ensuite means then. It's an adverb of time. And then you've got suis allé. Suis allé is the verb. The tense again is the passé composé. However, instead of using the auxiliary avoir, to have, we are using être, to be. Why is this? Well, because aller, to go, is known as a movement verb. Please have a look at previous videos where I cover all verb using être in the passé composé. Because aller is a movement verb, you're going to use être and not avoir as the auxiliary. And again, here we're using je as a pronoun, as a subject pronoun, I. So you must know how to conjugate être in the present tense. Je comes with suis. Tu comes with est. Il est, elle est, nous sommes, vous êtes, and so on. So that je suis allé, tu es allé, il est allé, and so on. And you do the same with the auxiliary avoir. I have is j'ai. J'ai adoré, tu as adoré, il a adoré. So this is where it's very important for you to know avoir and être in the present tense in order to conjugate in the passé composé. So note that when using être, the past participle must agree in gender and number with the subject. So what do I mean by that? Did you see how we put aller.e or aller with the e at the end as an option? Here, je can either relate to a feminine or masculine subject. If it relates to a masculine subject, write aller, just as it is. But if je is feminine, then add an e to it. Should the subject be feminine plural, elle, E-double-L-E-S, for example, they, feminine plural, for example, then aller, A-double-L-E-E-S, would end with es, okay? With a masculine plural such as il, I-L-S, then it would end with an s. And this is what I mean when you must agree the past participle with the subject if using the auxiliary être. For avoir, this rule doesn't apply. The past participle does not agree with the subject. Now let's have a look at à la. À la means to the. À is a preposition. La is a feminine definite article. Because the noun boulangerie is feminine singular. So, to the is à la. But, like all things in French, prepositions change depending on the noun that follows. So you've got to think, is your noun feminine singular? Then you use à la. Je vais à la boulangerie, à la pharmacie, à la piscine. Is your noun masculine singular? Then use au, because we can't say à le. Is your noun plural? Then use au, e-u-x, for example. So, let's have a look at the sentence. Ensuite, je suis allé à la boulangerie. Then I went to the bakery. Does this make sense? Let's have a look at the last sentence. The last sentence is the hardest to understand, okay? Je ne me suis pas ennuyé. There's lots of difficulties here, but listen to me really carefully because it will become much clearer after this. Je is the subject pronoun. It's throughout the text. I, okay? But then you've got ne and then pas. that's a negation. You've got to point and look at negations when you see a text. Has the text got negation? Has the sentence got negation? It is here placed before the reflexive pronoun me and after the auxiliary être. Je ne me suis pas. Me is a reflexive pronoun and goes with the entire verb s'ennuyer, which means to be bored. How can I see that it's reflexive? Because in its infinitive form, it has an S, se, S-E, se. In that case, it's S apostrophe because ennuyer begins with a vowel. So we say s'ennuyer instead of se ennuyer. But it will be the same with se regarder, to watch oneself. Remember, it's reflexive. Okay. Se brosser, to brush yourself. Okay. So, me indicates that that verb is back to you. And depending on the subject pronouns, then the reflexive pronouns change. So, have a look at the list here. For je, it's me. So, in the past tense, je me suis ennuyé. Tu t'es ennuyé. Il s'est ennuyé. Nous nous sommes ennuyés. Vous vous êtes ennuyés. Ils se sont ennuyés. It's hard, isn't it? Because s'ennuyer is a reflexive verb, it is conjugated with the auxiliary être in the passé composé. Again, just like aller, which is a movement verb, the past participle, when it's a reflexive verb, has to agree in number and gender with the subject. So, if je is feminine, add an I at the end of the past participle. Je ne me suis pas ennuyé. I didn't get bored. Now, look at the entire phrase again. Hier, j'ai fait de la natation et j'ai adoré. Ensuite, je suis allée à la boulangerie. Je ne me suis pas ennuyé. Hier and ensuite are adverbs of time. J'ai fait, j'ai adoré, je suis allée, je me suis ennuyé are all in the passé composé, using two different auxiliaries. The first two, avoir. The last two, être. A is a preposition. La is a feminine definite article. Of course, we have le and les as well. That's another lesson. Et is here as a coordinating conjunction, meaning and. And natation and boulangerie are the only nouns in this sentence. So, shall we read this sentence again together? And it's going to make so much sense. And please leave a comment if it makes sense. And why don't you write your own sentence at A2 level? Here we go. Hier, j'ai fait de la natation et j'ai adoré. Ensuite, je suis allée à la boulangerie. Je ne me suis pas ennuyée. Okay, that's it for me. Have a look at other lessons that I have produced in the past. For example, these live lessons on reflexive verbs. And leave a comment. How much do you like this exercise? Can you make your own sentence at A2 level? Here's a couple of sentences in French at B1 level. Can you understand these sentences? In today's video, we will take a sentence apart so that you are able to make your own with confidence. This series is all about understanding sentence structure in French and identifying the role of each word. So, let's start. Ma famille et moi voudrions partir en vacances en Italie. Malheureusement, nous ne pourrons pas y aller cette année. Sentences are constructed with verbs, articles, pronouns, adverbs, conjunctions, etc. So, what I want to do is take this text apart. Let's have a look at the first sentence. Can you define each word grammatically? Ma famille et moi voudrions partir en vacances en Italie. Let's start by the very beginning of this sentence. Ma. Ma means my. It's a possessive adjective. We use ma because the noun famille is feminine and singular. With a masculine singular noun, we would use mon chat, for example. And with a plural noun, we use mes chats, my cats. Et in that sentence is a coordinating conjunction. And moi is known as an emphatic or stressed pronoun. Emphatic pronouns are moi, toi, lui, elle, nous, vous, eux, elle. Can you spot the verbs in this sentence? Well, we have voudrions, don't we? Which is the conditional of the verb vouloir, which means to want. It has the ion ending because the subject is nous. So, ma famille et moi is nous, my family and I, is we as a subject. So we need to agree the ending of the verb with the subject it relates to. It means we would like. Nous voudrions. Of course, if you're not familiar with how to conjugate a verb in the conditional tense, I have done many videos following rules of how to conjugate in the conditional tense. Notice also that there is a second verb, partir. Nous voudrions partir. Partir is to go or to leave in its infinitive form. So which means, in other words, it is not conjugated. It is to leave. Nous voudrions partir. We would like to leave or to go. Or, yes, that's pretty much what partir means, to go or leave. As for en, we can see it twice here. En can be a preposition followed by a place, like en Italie, in Italy. Or preposition followed by a noun, like en vacances, on holiday. But, unfortunately for us, it can also be an adverbial pronoun used to replace nouns in sentences about quantity or place. For example, tu as acheté des pommes? Have you bought apples? Oui, j'en ai acheté 3. Yes, I bought 3 of them. Of them, that's what en means here. So it's a versatile little word, that. And if you want to learn more, please check my YouTube videos on this very topic, I versus en. So, let's have a look at this sentence again. Ma famille et moi voudrions partir en vacances en Italie. Means, my family and I would like to go on holiday to Italy or in Italy. Now let's have a look at the second sentence. Malheureusement, nous ne pourrons pas y aller cette année. Now this one is slightly more complicated. Can you spot the verb and its tense? Can you spot the adverb in that sentence? Can you spot the nouns and the pronouns? Okay, let's have a look at this sentence and let's start with malheureusement. Malheureusement. So this is known as an adverb of manner. And it means unfortunately. Within this word, have a look at the word. You have the feminine of happy, heureuse. Can you see that word within that word? Heureuse. And we've added ment to make it an adverb. So heureusement, happily. And then to make it unhappily or unfortunately, we added a prefix, mal. Malheureusement. It becomes unhappily or unfortunately. Okay, so now let's have a look at the verbs. Yes, pourront. Pourront is one of them. Here, it's in the future tense. It's the future tense of pouvoir, to be able to, or can. Auront is the ending because of the subject pronoun nous. Always, nous is ons at the end. Pouvons would be the present tense, and pourrions would be the conditional tense. So, nous pouvons, we can. Nous pourrions, we could. You see? Sometimes it takes one little letter, and that means something completely different. Again, I cover how to conjugate conditional and future in great length in my course at Learn French with Alexa, the website. Now, can you see the negation ne pas? Ne is always placed before the verb and pas after. So, nous ne pourrons pas, we will not be able to. To do what? The second verb is aller. And just like partir, it is in its infinitive form. Okay, so nous ne pourrons pas aller, we will not be able to go. Now, let's have a look at one letter, which I think is the hardest in the whole sentence. I. Nous ne pourrons pas y aller. What is it? Well, just like en, en, I is an adverbial pronoun. I can be used to replace a location, in which case it means there in English, or to replace an object, not people, introduced by a. For example, tu t'intéresses à la musique? Oui, je m'y intéresse. Are you into music? Yes, I'm into it. To learn more about I and en, you can check out my YouTube videos on these pronouns. Again, to recap. In our sentence, I replaces Italy. We won't be able to go there. So technically, nous ne pourrons pas y aller means we will not be able there to go. I know it makes no sense, okay? But in this case, I has to come before the infinitive aller. And to finish, cette année. Can you see that? Cette année. Have you come across cette? C-E-T-T-E? Yeah? Well, cette année is a feminine demonstrative. Okay, adjective. It means this. So we've got a few. Ce, set, depending on whether the words that follow is masculine or begins with a vowel or is feminine. So in our case, année is a feminine word, so we use cette année. It's very important. It means this year. Have a look at the full sentence. Malheureusement, nous ne pourrons pas y aller cette année. Unfortunately, we will not be able to go there this year. How are we doing so far? Are you able to spot the verbs now? Are you able to spot these little coordinates or these little adverbs? Can you identify them all? Here's the full sentence. Ma famille et moi voudrions partir en vacances en Italie. Malheureusement, nous ne pourrons pas y aller cette année. Can you see the verbs now? Can you see the pronouns? Can you see the adverbs? Can you see the nouns? This video is part of a series. Why don't you have a look at other videos based on understanding sentences in French at different level? And again, I cover all these extremely difficult grammatical subjects as part of the course, the complete French course at learnfrenchwithalexa.com. Please have a look. It's extremely popular. Here is a couple of sentences in French at B2 level. Can you understand these sentences? So this is the sentence. Bien que la décision dont nous avions parlé puisse sembler risquée au premier abord, elle se révélera bénéfique sur le long terme. In today's video, we will take a sentence apart, that one, so that you are able to make your own with confidence. So, remember, sentences are constructed with nouns, verbs, articles, pronouns, adverbs, conjunctions, etc. These sentences, especially the ones at B2 that we have chosen today, can be seen in a professional settings, okay? It could be a document, it could be a conversation, more professional. This series is all about understanding sentence structure in French and identifying the role of each word. So, let's start. Let's have a look at the full sentence again, and then I will take the first part of the sentence. Bien que la décision dont nous avions parlé puisse sembler risquée au premier abord, elle se révélera bénéfique sur le long terme. Okay, let's have a look at the first part of this paragraph, if you wish, of the two sentences. Bien que is known as a conjonction de subordination, conjunction of subordination. It means even though or although. Bien que is used to express a concession and is always followed by the subjunctive, which makes this sentence a B2 level. Now, if we have a look at la décision, and they go together, because la is a feminine singular definite article. Why do they go together? Because décision is also a feminine singular noun, and the two go together. So whatever article you're going to choose has to agree with the gender and the number of the noun you're using. Remember that le is masculine singular, definite article, and les is used for a plural definite noun. Okay, so in that case, it's a plural definite article. Okay, let's have a look at dont. It means of which or from. This is known as a relative pronoun. It refers back to the noun décision in our sentence. Why are we using dont? Because it is used here with the verb parler. And parler is usually followed by de. So, nous avions parlé de quoi? We talked about what? Nous avions parlé de la décision. As for nous, it's of course a subject pronoun, so first person plural. Remember, je, tu, il, elle, on, nous, vous, il, elle. So, any verbs which follow will have to be conjugated with the right endings. For nous, the ending of any verbs will be on, O-N-S, in the present tense, or ion, I-O-N-S, in the imperfect or conditional tense. Here, nous avions parlé, we had spoken. This is a pluperfect, so le plus que parfait de l'indicatif. This tense is formed with the auxiliaire avoir or être. It depends on the verb we're using. Now, I have lots of lesson on what auxiliary to use for what verbs. Okay, in that case, we're using avoir. It is used with avoir in the imperfect tense and followed by the past participle of the conjugated verb. So have a look at it again. Nous avions parlé. Can you say that? So we had, so avions here is in the imperfect, and we follow by a past participle, just like we use a passé composé. Okay? Now let's have a look at puisse. Puisse is the present subjunctive of pouvoir. I know, right? Now it is here in the third person singular because the subject is la décision. So elle, third person singular. And as mentioned before, we need the subjunctive because of bien que at the beginning of the sentence. Now remember the full sentence. Bien que la décision dont nous avions parlé puisse sembler risquée au premier abord. Okay, that's the full sentence. Okay, hence why we have puisse, because we started with bien que. Okay, what is sembler here in that case? Puisse sembler risqué. It comes right after pouvoir, okay, in the subjunctive. So it may seem. Sembler means to seem, okay? Puisse sembler, may seem. Or literally it means may to seem, because in that case, sembler is in its infinitive form. So, puisse sembler risqué. Now, risqué is an adjective in its feminine singular form because it agrees with the word décision, which is also feminine singular. Remember that all the adjectives in French agree with the gender and number of the noun they relate to. However, there are some colors that do not follow this pattern, but that's another lesson completely. Let's look at au premier abord, which means at first sight. It is an adverbial phrase made of three elements. Au, which is a contraction of the preposition à and the article le. So you can't say à le, you say au. And premier, the ordinal adjective, okay, in its masculine singular form because of the gender of abord. Okay, so abord is a masculine singular noun, so everything is going to relate. Au, masculine singular. Premier is going to be masculine singular, and abord is masculine singular. Do you see the connection here of all the words? And a lot of the time in sentences, actually every time. Be aware of your subject. Be aware of the noun you're using. Okay, is your subject a feminine plural? Then in that case, what's going to follow should all agree in feminine plural, and so on. It's very important. So let's have a look at the full sentence now. Bien que la décision dont, and not que, and not qui, dont nous avions parlé puisse is your subjunctive, sembler risqué au premier abord. So what does it mean? Although the decision we had talked, plus que parfait, about may seem risky at first glance. Okay, can you see that? Now remember, this is of B2 at a high professional level. Now let's have a look at the second part of this sentence now. Are you ready for it? Elle se révélera bénéfique sur le long terme. I mean, out of the two sentences, I think this one may be easier, okay? But it comes together and we will translate it all at the end of this lesson. Now, elle is a subject pronoun which refers to la décision. Again, that's what I said earlier on. Everything has to agree in gender and number, okay? Se is a reflexive pronoun and goes with se révéler, to reveal itself. So we say elle se révélera. Here, révélera is in the futur simple de l'indicatif for révéler or future simple. Now, révéler means to reveal. The way it is with er is in its infinitive form. However, in order to make it a future, we have to add the right ending. For elle, the subject pronoun of la décision, it is a. Elle se révélera. So you keep the full verb as it is and you add an a. And of course, if you want to know how to conjugate these tenses in the future and so on, I have a very popular video on how to conjugate a verb in different tenses. So have a look at this. Elle se révélera bénéfique. What about bénéfique? It is an adjective in its singular form. Note that the adjective ending in a remain the same in the feminine and masculine. So that will be the same. Bénéfique ou bénéfique, you don't necessarily see the gender of the noun it is attached to, okay, if you see the word itself. However, if you know that la décision se révélera bénéfique, we know that bénéfique here is a feminine adjective. As for sur, well, that's a preposition. It means on or in, depending on the context. And of course, le is a definite article, masculine singular, referring to the noun terme, le terme. And so we have long as well. Long is a masculine singular adjective. Why is this? Because terme is masculine singular. So have a look at the full sentence. Elle se révélera bénéfique sur le long terme. It means it will prove beneficial in the long term. It, of course, refers to elle. Elle refers to la décision. Have a look at the full sentence now. Remember, this is B2 level at a high professional level. This is something you would see in a letter at work or whatever, okay? But it's useful for anybody to know about the placement of words and especially about the subjunctive. I cover the subjunctive in great length in my course, learnfrenchwithalexa.com. If you do not know the course, have a look because it's followed by hundreds of thousands of people. Now here's the sentence. Bien que la décision dont nous avions parlé puisse sembler risquée au premier abord, elle se révélera bénéfique sur le long terme. So, although the decision we had talked about may seem risky at first glance, it will prove beneficial in the long term. Now, I remind you that this is of B2 level. Why is that? Because there is a subjunctive, there is a plus que parfait, there is an adverbial phrase here as well. That makes it complex. Have you come across sentences like that in your workplace, if you're in the French workplace, or even if you're studying French for a TEF or whatever context or TCF? Have you come across a complex sentence like that? If so, can you put that in the comments below? Why don't you have a look at this B1 level sentence where I do exactly the same, except that this time it's not a B2 level, it's a B1 level sentence. Here's a couple of sentences in French's C1 level. Can you understand these sentences? Now, this is the sentence. Tu aurais dû venir à l'événement auquel tu avais été invité. Maintenant, il va falloir que tu fasses des excuses. Now, this series is all about understanding sentence structure in French and identifying the role of each word. So, we are going to do just that. Let's have a look at the first sentence. Can you define each word grammatically? Now, remember, this is C1 level. This is like high-level stuff. Basically, you will find this in real French conversation or at professional setups and things like that. So stick with me if you want to know what to learn in order to reach that C1 level. Tu aurais dû venir à l'événement auquel tu avais été invité. I could say tu avais été invité. No need to do the liaison. Now, this sentence is complex and uses a main clause plus a relative clause. So, the main clause is tu aurais dû venir à l'événement. And the relative one is auquel tu avais été invité. The main clause can exist on its own, while the relative can't because it depends on the main clause. Now, let's have a look at the sentence in more detail. Tu is a personal pronoun. It means you. We know what that means. It is the subject of the verb aurait dû, which is a past conditional or conditionnel passé. How do I know this? Well, any composed past tenses have an auxiliary and a past participle. What you need to know is the tense of the auxiliary. In our example, avoir, to have, is in its conditional form, aurait, and the main verb, devoir, is in its past participle form, dû. Now, notice the circumflex, which is this hat on top of the U on the past participle dû, okay? Devoir in the conditional is the verb that we use for should. That's the direct translation in English. So, je devrais is I should. But when put into its past conditional tense, it becomes I should have. J'aurais dû. Can you say that? I cover the modals would and should and could in my course, so have a look at it, please. Now, the past conditional is particularly used to express a remorse or a reproach in French, which works well in this case. So, tu aurais dû venir à l'événement means you should have come to the event, okay? Now, venir is to come, okay? Here it is in its infinitive form. And à l'événement, à is a preposition. It can have several meanings, but here it is used for a destination. So, venir à means to come to. So, à l'événement. Let's have a look at l'événement. L'événement is a masculine singular noun, okay? It means the event. Now, let's have a look at the relative clause. Auquel tu avais été invité. Like I said earlier, you can do the liaison between avait and été. So, auquel tu avais été invité. That works too. Again, I have a video on liaison. If you're not familiar with what that means, have a look at this video. Auquel is known as a relative pronoun. It is the contraction of à and lequel. It is in its masculine singular form here because it refers to the word événement, which is a masculine singular noun. Relative pronouns are useful to link to sentences and it helps to avoid repetition of words, okay, previously mentioned. Now, have a look at auquel, but we've got other spellings of auquel, depending on whether the noun is masculine singular, feminine singular, masculine plural, feminine plural. Basically, we've got 4 different ways of saying auquel. Let's look at tu avais été invité. Auquel tu avais été invité. Tu is a personal pronoun, okay? It's a subject of the verb avait été invité. So because we have tu, everything else must agree to tu. Avait été invité is a plus que parfait in the passive voice. Okay, and this is what makes this sentence of C1 level. I cover the passive and the active voices in great detail in my course, so please check it out. So if you translate avait été invité, tu avais été invité, it's you had been invited. Just a quick reminder here that invité is in the masculine form here, okay? And the reason for it is because tu is masculine in our case in that sentence. If it had been feminine, as in you are a lady, you would have added an E to invité, okay? What you need to know is that when we're using a passive voice, the past participle needs to agree in gender and number, very good, with the subject because of the verb être in this case. So let's have a look at the full sentence now. Tu aurais dû venir à l'événement auquel tu avais été invité. Wow, that's a mouthful. You should have come to the event you were invited to, or you had been invited, like that's the literal translation. This is high-level stuff, remember? Okay, let's have a look at the second sentence that is attached to the first sentence. Maintenant, il va falloir que tu fasses des excuses. Can you see the structure of it? And can you see the difficulty here? Now, the overall structure of the second sentence is this. Adverb, maintenant, plus impersonal constructions, il va falloir que, plus a subordinate clause, tu fasses des excuses. That's how it is formed. So we know what maintenant means. It means now. It's an adverb of time. Very good. Now, il va falloir is interesting because it is known as an impersonal structure, just like it is necessary that. So il here is an impersonal subject pronoun. It's not he, it's it. So it is the subject of the verb va falloir, which is here a near future. It is going to be necessary. Yeah, it is going to be necessary that. Il va falloir. Now, falloir, you may have heard il faut que. It is necessary that. So here falloir is in its infinitive form, okay? Il faut que has been conjugated in the present tense, okay? But il va falloir que, it is going to be necessary that we are using the near future. Or il faudra que, it will be necessary that. Il fallait que, it was necessary. Okay, so you can use this impersonal verb and put it in all kind of tenses if you wanted to. Now, que is the conjunction of subordination. It's very important here because the fact that falloir is followed by que means that what needs to come next is a subjunctive. Very good. And the subjunctive is tu fasses. Have you come across this before? Now, tu fasses. The verb here is faire, to do or to make. In this case, it's conjugated in the present subjunctive. Very good. So, il faut que tu fasses. You have to do. Il va falloir que tu fasses it. You will need to do. So, maintenant, il va falloir que tu fasses des excuses. Now, you are going to have to apologize. Now, faire des excuses means to apologize. It's a phrase that you should really learn. C'est je te fais mes excuses. I am apologizing to you. Des is the indefinite article in the plural form. Okay, you've got de and you've got des. Excuse is a feminine noun in the plural form. So we've seen the second sentence. Have a look at the full mini text or two sentences. Okay, how does it look to you? Tu aurais dû venir à l'événement auquel tu avais été invité. Maintenant, il va falloir que tu fasses des excuses. You should have come to the event you were invited to. Now, you have to apologize. Now, at C1 level, you realize that not everything can be translated word for word. Can you see that? So at C1 level, I'm afraid to say that you need to know your conditionnel passé. Tu aurais dû, for example. Your passive form in the past tense. Tu avais été invité. Your il va falloir que, as in your impersonal phrase using the futur proche. And of course, the subjunctive tu fasses in that case. Now, of course, this is a high-level grammar, but if you like the way that I teach it, then have a look at my course Learn French with Alexa, where I take you through these very complex grammatical points in the simplest way possible. Now, why don't you click here for the full playlist of structured sentences from A1 to C1 level and see which of these levels you can understand best. Here's a couple of sentences in French at C2 level. Can you understand these sentences? En dépit de l'intervention rapide de la police sur les lieux du crime, le commissaire ne trouva aucun indice susceptible de l'aider à établir la moindre hypothèse. Le cambrioleur avait pris les jambes à son cou et s'était volatilisé, ne laissant aucune trace derrière lui. Well, in today's video, we will take these sentences apart so that you are able to make your own C2 level sentence with confidence. Now, let's take a look at the first sentence. Can you define each word grammatically? Now, remember that this is a C2 level, so not for the faint-hearted. Of course, I have done similar videos on other levels too. So if you think that C2 is too high, have a look at A1, A2, B1, B2 level and C1. Now let's have a look at the first part of this paragraph. En dépit de l'intervention rapide de la police sur les lieux du crime, le commissaire ne trouva aucun indice susceptible de l'aider à établir la moindre hypothèse. Now, the first part of this sentence is known as a circumstantial clause of concession. So what does it mean? It means that it indicates the circumstances in which an action occurs. So it provides additional information. So a concession can be introduced by prepositions such as malgré ou en dépit de. So in spite of or despite. En dépit de is known as a complex preposition expressing a concession. Now, en dépit de l'intervention, despite the intervention, so the intervention of the police. L'intervention is a feminine singular noun. Why, you may ask, do we put L with an apostrophe in front of intervention? Well, it's quite simple. It begins with a vowel, so therefore, even if there was an E or an A in front, we would have to get rid of it in order to, instead of saying la intervention, we say l'intervention. But each noun remains feminine or masculine, okay? In this case, it is a singular feminine noun. Now, rapide is an adjective modifying the intervention. So, intervention rapide, the fast intervention of the police, de la police. Now, de la police is the complement of the noun intervention, okay? It includes the preposition de plus the definite article la, okay? Feminine singular, and the feminine singular noun, police. And of course, you would say la because police is feminine. The two have to agree in gender and number. Now, the next part of this sentence is sur les lieux du crime. So, this is an additional prepositional phrase, which is on the crime's location. Like sur is the preposition, les is the definite article in the plural form. Remember, we've got le, la, les. And lieu goes along with les because it's a masculine noun in the plural form. Lieu means place or location or scène or scene, so the scene of crime, les lieux du crime, of the crime, okay? Du crime is the complement of the noun lieu. The premises of what? the premises or the place or location of the crime. Now, then we've got le commissaire ne trouva aucun indice. Okay, now le commissaire is a noun. It is the inspector, the commissaire. Okay, it's the subject of the main verb trouva. Okay, and trouva is where that sentence makes it a bit higher to understand. It's a C2 level. Trouva here is the verb trouver, to find, conjugated in its passé simple form. Okay, known also as the past historic. We do not use this in everyday French, okay, but you would find it in books sometimes. So be aware of that tense, even though you wouldn't use it necessarily. It depends at which level you want to go. Now, the verb trouver, in that case here, passé simple of trouva, okay, the subject being il, le commissaire, okay, il ne trouva aucun. So trouver is surrounded by a negation, ne and aucun, so which technically means not anything at all, okay. Aucun means nothing, nothing. So negations would be ne pas or ne plus, not anymore, or not anything, okay? But ne aucun is really strong in that it means nothing at all. In this case, we're talking about aucun indice, okay, which means no clue. No clue. That's literally what it means, no clue, okay? So notice that the indice is a masculine singular noun, okay, which is the direct object to trouver, to find. So, il ne trouva pas quoi? Aucun indice, okay? Now, aucun here, and this is very important, is known as a determiner, okay? And you can put it in its feminine form as well, okay? Here, it's in its singular form because the noun indice, clue, is a masculine noun in the singular. It's very relevant because we are going to find this word in the feminine form a bit later on. So, as for the rest of the sentence, susceptible de l'aider à établir la moindre hypothèse. Well, this sentence is an adjectival phrase modifying the noun indice, clue, okay? So susceptible de, susceptible of, it's composed of an adjective and a preposition. Okay, it's likely or capable of. And l'aider à établir la moindre hypothèse is out there in terms of high level in French, okay? This is known as the infinitive clause, okay? Because aider is in its infinitive form. So have a look at that. L'aider, L apostrophe, is a direct object pronoun. It's him, to help him. But in French, we say to him help, okay? So helping who? The commissaire, the inspector. Can you say that? So aider is in its infinitive form. It's a verb, okay? So helping to do what? Here we've got two infinitive. Aider à établir, to help him to establish, okay? Again, à établir is known as an infinitive complement, to establish. I think what you would find the most complicated in this sentence is la moindre hypothèse, okay? So la moindre hypothèse is the direct object of établir, the slightest theory. That's what it means, la moindre hypothèse. La moindre is a superlative meaning the least, okay? So la, here, not le, not les, is used here because hypothèse is a feminine noun. Okay. Had it been a masculine noun, we would use le moindre ou les moindres plus the noun you want to use. Okay, so I know this is very difficult. Remember, this is C2 level. You know, it's out there in terms of difficulty. So if I recap the first part of that paragraph, en dépit de l'intervention rapide de la police sur les lieux du crime, le commissaire ne trouva aucun indice, so the inspector did not find any clue susceptible de l'aider, susceptible to help him, you know, to establish the slightest theory. So, despite the police arriving swiftly, rapidement ou rapide, at the crime scene, the inspector found no clues that might help him form even the slightest theory. Now, Let's take a breather and let's have a look at the second sentence. Le cambrioleur avait pris les jambes à son cou et s'était volatilisé, ne laissant aucune trace derrière lui. Now, how much of this do you understand? The aucun, we've seen that it means not at all. Here we've got aucune. But we are going to find out why it's aucune this time, okay? But let's start with le cambrioleur. That's the burglar, okay? That is the subject of that sentence, okay? It's composed of le as a definite article and cambrioleur as the masculine singular noun. Now remember, it all agrees, okay? Because cambrioleur is masculine, we are going to use le, not la, not les. It's not a plural, it's not a feminine. Now, what does le cambrioleur do? Il avait pris les jambes à son cou. Now here, there is a verb plus a complément d'objet direct, which is also an idiom. Now, prendre les jambes à son cou, that means to legs to his neck, to have the legs to his neck. But it means to take to one's heel or to flee, okay? So it's very important that when you are going to deal with C1 or C2 level, you're very aware of idioms because that's what makes the language so difficult to understand a lot of the time. If you were to look at this sentence, prendre les jambes à son cou literally means to take your legs to your neck. That means nothing. But if you know that it is an idiom, then it makes sense in context. Now, do you know the tense of il avait pris? Do you know that? So, avait, had, pris, taken. Okay, so what we have here is a plus que parfait, so a pluperfect, okay? It's the pluperfect of prendre, to take. Prendre is here the infinitive. Pris is the past participle. And because we have to have in the imparfait plus a past participle, we know that this tense is a past tense, but we also know that it's a plus que parfait. Again, I cover all of these very intricate tenses in details in my course. So, le cambrioleur avait pris les jambes à son cou, the legs to his or her neck, like literally. It means the burglar had taken to his heels or had flee, had gone away, escaped, okay? And then there is another pluperfect, even more difficult. Et s'était volatilisé and vanished into thin air. Now, et is a coordinate, okay, it means and, but s'était volatilisé is where the difficulty here is, okay? Now, if you take this apart and remove était, remove the past participle and look at what the verb is in its infinitive form, it's se volatiliser, okay? Now, because it has se in front, it means it's a reflexive verb, okay? Now, there is some difficulty with this particular verb in the pluperfect in that when you conjugate a reflexive verb in the past tense, or passé composé, or plus que parfait in that, or even futur antérieur, or past conditional, you will have to use the right auxiliary. In this case, we're using était. Il s'était volatilisé. And why is that? Because se volatiliser is a reflexive, and any reflexive verbs in the past tense have to use to be in the past tense. I've said that before. But because we're using the plus que parfait, then to be has to be conjugated in the imperfect plus past participle. Does that make sense at all? And of course, you need to agree the reflexive pronoun with the subject pronoun. So for il, it's se. For je, it's me. For nous, it's nous. For vous, it's vous. And so on. So this is quite a difficult tense to grasp in some ways, Again, I cover that in my course in great details. As for the last part of the sentence, ne laissant aucune trace derrière lui. Do you understand that? Now, we have ne and aucune, so we know it's a negation. But laissant, what tense is that? if it is a tense at all? Well, it is known as a present participle. Okay, it's a clause which gives additional information about the action. So when you form a participe présent, what you need to do is take the verb and add ant at the end. For example, laisser becomes laissant. So to leave becomes leaving. Okay, manger, mangeant, en mangeant, while eating. And that's what a présent, a participe présent is. So in this case, ne laissant aucune, okay, the present participle of laisser, here in the negation form, okay, aucune trace. And this is very relevant. No trace. Okay, that's the complément d'objet direct of ne laissant. Now, aucune has an E here, not like aucun early on. Aucune has an E because trace is feminine. So therefore, aucune has to agree with the gender of that word. Aucun for masculine, aucune for feminine words. So, ne laissant aucune trace derrière lui, leaving no trace behind him. Derrière lui, preposition of place plus the pronoun lui, him, in the masculine singular form. So, the last part of this paragraph, le cambrioleur avait pris les jambes à son cou et s'était volatilisé, ne laissant aucune trace derrière lui. The burglar had taken to his heels and vanished into thin air, leaving no trace behind. So, if we now look at the full paragraph, which I'm going to read, this should become easier. Can you see the idiom in it? Avait pris les jambes à son cou. Can you see the plus que parfait, plus perfect? Avait pris and s'était volatilisé. Can you see the passé simple? Trouva. And the infinitive verbs établir and aider. And the present participle, laissant. En dépit de l'intervention rapide de la police sur les lieux du crime, le commissaire ne trouva aucun indice susceptible de l'aider à établir la moindre hypothèse. Le cambrioleur avait pris les jambes à son cou et s'était volatilisé, ne laissant aucune trace derrière lui. The purpose of this exercise is for you to be able to spot really important verbs or noun or subject in the sentence when you're going to do any kind of reading, okay? Especially during an exam, such as a TEF exam or the GCSE exam or the DELF or the DELF exam. Now remember that if this is too hard for you, which I believe is hard even for French people, you know, why don't you have a look at the other videos where I cover levels A1, A2, B1, B2 and C1 levels. And again, I cover all these very intricate tenses in my course at learnfrench.ch. That's it for me. Au revoir, à bientôt, bisous bisous.